Today's episode is one that carries both deep loss and incredible purpose. I'm joined by Dr. Delicia Munfus-McCray, who shares her journey after the heartbreaking loss of her stillborn daughter, Priscilla. What began as unimaginable grief became the foundation for a mission that is now helping other families navigate loss with more understanding, support, and care. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to grieve a child, the importance of having answers in the midst of loss, and how Dr. Delicia transformed her pain into purpose through her work as a pediatric perinatal pathologist and advocate. This episode is not only about grief, it's about legacy, compassion, and the ways healing can take shape even after the most difficult experiences. If you or someone you love has experienced loss, or if you're walking through a season of grief, this conversation is meant to remind you that you are not alone. Let's get into it. Welcome to The Life We're Given. I'm your host, Brandi. This is the podcast where honest conversations fuel you to keep moving forward in life, no matter what may stand in your way.
Healing from my teenager self, the one who dreamt of what a relationship would be.
Yeah, my doctor just called. She says I needed to go get a blood transfusion. I don't really know what that means, what that looks like. I've never had one before.
We talk about the hard moments in life.
Do I matter? Do I matter to you? And so I've always had that question of identity from a parent figure.
Hearing resilient stories from others will help you know that you are not alone.
It's so nice. I feel like we can relate.
Welcome back to another episode of The Life We're Given. I am so excited. I have an amazing person with me with a really cool and amazing story of just survival, grief, getting through all of that, but just something that she's done that I don't think anybody else has really experienced, and how it's really birthed this passion and nonprofit and books and everything from there. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Delicia Munfus-McCray on with me today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. This is going to be a really cool conversation just about your life journey of having a child that was stillborn and everything that you've been able to do from there, and just really the mental strength to be able to have a non-invasive autopsy. So we'll get into that as well. And having two boys and your precious the baby of the family,
yes.
Really kind of birthing another passion of yours. So yeah, we're excited to get into it. Just to give listeners like a little bit about you, tell us something personal about you and something professional about you as well.
Well, something personal about me. Well, I have a passion for special needs kids. But more than that, I coach girls wrestling, and that's kind of one of my things I do on the side because it's just fun.
Cool.
And
that's so
professionally,
cool.
I'm a pediatric perinatal pathologist by trade, and I have my own business.
Nice. Wow. No, I didn't know you coach wrestling. What age group of girls?
From age 5 to age usually about 12, so basic kindergarten to 6th grade.
Oh, that's so cool. I like that. That's a cool little passion on the side.
Keeps me in shape.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I do want to start and get into just the day that's really like changed. I feel like from when we talked before this episode, just really changed the trajectory of you and your passions, and really just bringing out, I feel like, more about you. So can you walk us through that time in your life where you really had to walk through grief yourself?
So the day that kind of changed my life was supposed to be one of the most exciting days for my life. So it was my husband and I going to the doctor, the OBGYN, and bringing my son because my son's been asking for a sibling for years and years and years, and he was 8, for him to get the gender reveal of his little brother, little sister. And so we got into the room, the nurse got there and said, there's no heartbeat. And I'm like, wait a minute. As a pathologist, I know what that means. But at the same time, you want to have another nurse come in and check. And then the doctor came in and said, there's no heartbeat. Your girl is passed. And of course, my 8-year-old said, I had a sister. Mommy, what happened? Why is she not,
Wow.
doesn't have a heartbeat? And that kind of turned the trajectory of my entire life. And me being a pathologist who's done autopsies, I haven't done autopsies for years, like about 6 or 7 years before this. Autopsies every year, hundreds of autopsies. And this is the first time it actually affected me personally, where I was on the other side of the table.
Yeah. And that, I mean, first off, that had to be hard to have your son in there as well and hearing that news and having to probably comfort him as well and
Exactly.
talk him through, but you're trying to figure out what's going on too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. How would you say your husband took the news as well? Like, how was that with your
He was
relationship with him?
he was trying to be stoic, but a lot of people don't really, most people, when a baby passes, they think about the mom, but it hits kids hard and it hits the spouse or the male involved hard as well. Like my son was
Yeah.
hit a lot. My son had to go through counseling because of that. And he was only 8. So it hits
Wow.
everyone in the family. So you want to comfort them, but then you're hurting inside.
And you, as the mom, knowing that your child is stillborn, you probably know the medical side of it. And now you're, like you said, you're on the other side of it. How was it to be on that other side for you?
On the other side, it kind of made me pause and think of everything as a mom. Because of course, when I hear stillborn babies, I had done autopsies on stillborn babies before, and I was thinking of, okay, you need an autopsy to find out what
Yeah.
happened. But at that point, I was holding my daughter saying, I don't want anybody cutting on my baby. I want everything done respectively in like a loving way. So it kind of turned how I looked at autopsy and perfecting what I call the
hmm
non-invasive autopsy, a more respectful autopsy.
So you went on to do an autopsy on your child. Am I right?
I did. And when I say that, people think that sounds kind of gruesome, but I have been
Yeah.
working on what they
Yeah.
call non-invasive autopsies. One thing I
hmm
had learned over the years before that is 80% of the time, you don't need an invasive autopsy to find out what happened to a stillborn baby.
Wow.
So at that point, after I delivered the next day, I called in the nurses, I called in the doctor and said, bring my baby to me. Because they told me, send the baby to the university, you'll find it about 2 months, pay $5,000, and we'll find out what happened. And of course, I said, I'm a mom. I want to know
Yeah.
now what happened. And if I could do it without having to ship my baby away to the university and without paying $5,000, I want to be to do it. So I called the 2 nurses in, and the doctor and said, bring my baby, bring my placenta. And I was able to unwrap my child, look at my child as I would on a professional level. And I was able to
hmm
tell the doctor what happened, about when it happened, and the risk of recurrence. And then it hit me that every mom needs to be able to get this information.
Yeah. Like, how was that seeing your child? Because you're probably having to put on the doctor's hat, but
Exactly.
it's your child at the same time. Like, how was that
That was,
experience?
it was difficult, but at the same time, for me, it was relieving because I could see what happened because I had the training for it.
Mhm.
So I knew what
Yeah.
happened, the risk of recurrence. I knew that I can get pregnant again. When I had her, I was 38. And I was like, I might never have another child. But I was able
Yeah.
to find out immediately that my risk of recurrence was less than 5%, that I can get pregnant again. There's no genetic issues. I had a lot more closure than the average person would have. And then I
You
realized
did.
that every family needs that same kind of information.
And you got closure quicker than from what you've explained to me, what moms and parents get down the road with an autopsy.
Right. So I didn't have to wait 2 months to find out. I didn't have to, when somebody else wanted to ask me about something, I still grieved my daughter's loss, but I understood what
hmm
happened. And
Yeah.
when people say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, I felt a little bit okay because I knew I can get pregnant again if I wanted to. I knew what happened. I knew there's nothing that I did that caused her to pass. And just
Yeah.
that statement alone was enough to make it feel okay. It wasn't what I ate that day. It wasn't that I had a stomach bug the day before. I knew what happened. And I knew that there's
Yeah.
very low likelihood of it happening again.
Oh, wow. Like, I bet that was such peace, clarity
It was.
for you and for your family of knowing it wasn't you. Would you say, and I know we're going to get down the road to this, but I know you also now help so many mothers and parents in this position. Would you say that having that peace and clarity has helped you be able to help mothers down the road that experience the same thing, the same loss?
It does, because if I talk to a mom who I do the non-invasive autopsies, I give her a hug and say, Like, for example, one mom just 2 weeks ago, I said, what happened to your baby? There's actually no risk of recurrence. You can get pregnant again if you want to. You don't, the OB might tell you to wait a year, but you don't have to wait a year because the chances of this happening again is basically zero. And just the mom just broke down in tears and just gave me a hug. And it just made me feel all over again what I felt like when I talked about my daughter to the doctor. I'm like, the chance of it happening again is really low. Like, and there's nothing I did, because a lot of women and couples feel like there's something they did. Maybe they were drinking a little bit too much tea or something. People say maybe they drank too much milk, or maybe it's when they got their other kid hit them on the stomach. You just never know. If you don't know, then you don't know. And you always have the anxiety for the next pregnancy or just whatever else is going on.
Yeah. And that was my next question is, do you hear a lot of families, parents, mothers like blame themselves for it down the road?
All the time, every day. Yeah. So that's why I tell people an autopsy is what people need, is actually the standard of care. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow. And you said 80% of autopsies can be non-invasive.
Exactly.
Talk to us through, what does that mean for it to be a non-invasive autopsy?
So what a non-invasive autopsy means is you're not actually cutting on the baby. When people think of a traditional autopsy, think of somebody cutting out of the organs. So a non-invasive autopsy, there's no cutting on the baby. You don't take out any organs. So what you do is, if you need to look inside, you do imaging. So like, I might do an x-ray of a baby if I need to. I look at the mom's history. Because one thing about stillborn babies, they've never drunk alcohol. They don't smoke. You know, a lot of things that we get in our environment, they have not been exposed to. So if you can get a good detailed history, you can do a good examination of the baby, and the placenta gives you a lot of information as well. You put all those together and you have an expert put it together, you can find out the cause of death about 80% of the time or more.
Wow.
So that way the baby never has to leave the hospital.
And I don't know if you know the statistics on this, but as far as mothers having a stillborn child, like, how is this rare? Is this more often? Like, what factors go into that?
Well, actually in Alabama, we have over 450 plus stillborn babies every year. We have a lot in Alabama. And to me, it's kind of disturbing, because we have more than we should based on the number of people we have in Alabama. So even though it's not a huge population, that's still a whole lot of babies.
That is a lot. That's a year, right?
A year.
Wow.
So we have almost 500 a year, which is a lot for Alabama.
And it could be a lot of factors. It could be, am I right? Like, what all could go into it? Yeah.
I mean, it could
environment.
It could be environment. It could be medications. It could be just the living conditions. But the problem is, since very few autopsies are done, the state of Alabama doesn't even know. Like, I've already been to Montgomery and saying, do we know why these babies are passing? But without autopsy, you don't have all the information you need. So it's something that the state really can't address and collect the data. They really can't address without having autopsies to find out what's going on. So it's hard to prevent stillborn babies if you don't know what's happening.
Oh, that's so interesting. It sounds like that's something I feel like needs to be discovered. It sounds like in the state of Alabama, to understand what's going on. Is it in our environment? Is the meat that we're eating, like, what is it? That's very interesting.
Right. But there's no money to do that. And that's what I was told. There's not money to do that. But a lot of people go and grieve without having the information they need. Yeah.
Wow. And the price of an autopsy, not the non-invasive. We've talked about this. You said it's like it's $5,000.
$5,500.
That's expensive for somebody that's just grieving and trying to figure that out. Now, what's the price of a non-invasive autopsy?
Well, usually a non-invasive autopsy is about $1,500. So it's less. But then when I became independent, started charging $1,500, a lot of people couldn't afford that either. So that's why I started Priscilla's Path, to actually cover the cost of all of that. Because a lot of people can't afford it. And if they can, people think about my hospital bill. When you have a stillborn baby, you still deliver in the hospital. So you still have the hospital bill. You still have all your OB visits you may or may not have paid for at that point. So you have all these other expenses. And then you think about burial expenses as well. So there's a lot of expenses you have. You're like, well, I could buy food and pay my hospital bill or find out what happened. A lot of people just don't find out what happened because they don't have the money to do it.
They don't have the money. Wow. And most of those can be done non-invasive. what you talked about with your daughter, you said you didn't want her to be taken away from you. So as far as non-invasive, are they done closer to the parent? Like, how is that working as far as the proximity?
Is actually in the hospital. So what I do is I go to the hospital and see the family after the mother delivered, usually about 24 hours after the mother delivered. And I just take the baby to a different room because I don't like to necessarily examine the baby in front of the mom because, of course, I have to derobe the baby, things like that. People don't like to see that. But it might be down the hall, but it's usually on the same floor. And then I bring the baby back.
Oh,
So the
wow.
baby never leaves the hospital or the floor.
Yeah, which is different.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about Priscilla's path because that's one of the ventures that me and you talked about that you do is you started this nonprofit 501c3, and I'm going to put the link also in the show notes if anybody wants to donate or learn more about it. But tell us about Priscilla's path and why you started it.
So I started Priscilla's path, as I said before. A lot of people cannot afford the non-invasive autopsy. But even though 80% of the time a non-invasive works, about 10 to 20% of the time, you need an invasive autopsy. And if people cannot afford the non-invasive, they definitely will not be able to afford the invasive. One thing at universities, they need all the money up front before they even start the autopsy. So it's not like you can do a payment plan for an autopsy. So I wanted Priscilla's path to be able to pay for not just a non-invasive, but sometimes people need genetic studies. Sometimes you need an invasive autopsy to kind of cover that entire expense so a mom can get the answer she needs. And then people can donate. So instead of people necessarily bringing her food for comfort, they can donate for another person to get an answer.
Oh, wow. That is beautiful. That's a good way to put it. I think with Priscilla's path, from what I read about it, the work you guys are doing, I haven't seen anything like it. Are there other states doing this same type of work, or
Not
is
that I
this
know of.
pretty new? Yeah.
People do grief programs for pregnancy loss and a lot of counseling, but this is the first time I've seen that actually pays for autopsies. But I did meet a lady in Montgomery. She has one that pays for burial. So we've actually partnered for different situations. If a mom cannot pay for autopsy or burial, one mom here in Birmingham just got a burial of her daughter.
Oh my gosh.
So I've met people
you never
who go
think
through it.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never think about that when you get pregnant. Of course, that's like the last thing you want to think about. But all the expenses, even if you do lose a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very expensive. Wow. That I feel like there's so much you can do with your nonprofit and helping moms and helping coach them through this chapter and this grief. Do you partner with any therapists to kind of help them down the road that way?
Well, usually what I do, I've met other nonprofits that do pregnancy loss grief. So usually I try to navigate somebody to one of those pregnancy loss grief things. So with the Priscilla's Path, I'm trying to keep a singular focus because there's other groups that do grief. So I want them to do what they're good at, and I want to just focus on just getting the autopsies done and not kind of dilute what we're doing.
Yeah, because that's really the most important part is to figure out what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit into your own story. So after figuring out what was wrong with your daughter, did you ever name your daughter, by the way?
Her name was Priscilla. That's why it's called
Priscilla. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. So after figuring out what was wrong with Priscilla, getting on all the meds that you pretty much were like, okay, I know what happened. I need to take this and this and this. And after getting on all the medication, you were able to get pregnant again, right? Tell me about that.
Well, 2 years later, I got pregnant with Peter, and everything was going great until he was diagnosed with autism. And then my life kind of spiraled once again.
Yeah. So what age was Peter diagnosed?
He was 2.5. So he was just learning how to walk and talk at 2.5, which is very delayed.
Yeah. Yeah. What other symptoms would you say that you saw that kind of perked up that maybe something was wrong?
He was socially a little bit awkward, so he didn't really play with the other kids. He wanted to play by himself. And I noticed that he would ignore people. So we kept getting him tested for his hearing, and his hearing was fine. He just kept ignoring people like they didn't exist. So he just kind of wanted to be by himself.
Well, how was that for you and your husband kind of now navigating this other thing that you probably never thought you'd go through? But how was that journey?
It was difficult because he was kicked out of one daycare and then kicked out of another daycare. And then it hit me. I said, I cannot take care of patients if no one's willing to take care of my kid. So I'm like, the best person to come home was his mom, because he was a mama boy. So then I quit my partnership, that's a really good income to be a
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom while I started my own business.
Wow. So you moved fully into your
Yeah.
passions now, because I know from Peter being diagnosed with autism, that opened up another door for you with writing children's books. Tell us about that, and inclusion books too.
Right. So one thing I noticed about him being rejected by people, even people who come over to play, their kids stop coming over. I wanted him to learn about God's love before the
Mhm.
thought of rejection actually got into his spirit. Because one thing about special needs kids, they're excluded from a lot of things. So I wanted him to
Yeah.
know who loves him, not just mom and dad, but God loves him. Other people love him. I wanted him to learn how to talk. I wanted him to learn about kindness and a lot of things I wanted him to learn. And the first book, I kind of did a Pete the Cat style because he likes Pete the Cat. So I kind of used the same rhythm so he can learn. And he learned how to talk and learn how to
Oh,
grieve.
wow.
So, and he learned how to be social, like how to say please and thank you and you're welcome. All things I wanted him to know as a child. I wanted him to be able to participate in other things as other kids did.
And speaking to other moms that may be listening to this episode right now and trying to figure out, how is she doing all of this? Like, mother strengths, I feel are like none other. And you've really quitting your job and moving home or staying at home, knowing that that is the best thing for your child. For anybody that may be wrestling with anything, any mom, new mom, what advice do you give them? Like, how do you tell them to keep going forward?
Well, one thing I always tell people is, what's best for your child, and not to be overly spiritual, but know that things will work out. And that's part of the thing about Through the Eyes of a Special Child. Like, through the way, I'm a Christian person, and God provided every way. So just keep doing what you know needs to be done, and things will work out. It's going to be okay. Like, try not to focus so much on their special needs or your child lost, and find out what you're going to do. What's your next step? Because at some point, I always tell people, especially with grief, some points the tears stop. When the tears stop, decide what you're going to do. You can try to stay back in that grief, or you can push forward and do what needs to be done.
And I think, of course, going through this is something that you're mentally battling as well. You're trying to figure out, how am I going to make it to the next day sometimes? Or, okay, I know mentally I'm not okay right now. How was that with your husband, like leaning on your partner and knowing when to communicate that with him?
Well, with him, it's like we try to talk about it, but sometimes it was difficult to talk because, of course, men try to be supportive for their spouse. But at the same time, I had to learn to kind of pull the strength from within myself, and it's like pull myself up by the bootstraps. Sometimes you might not get the support from your spouse. Sometimes you might not get support from society. Sometimes you won't get support from teachers. You just have to advocate for what you need. And when you need to sit down and just cry, sit down and cry. Let the tears come, then wipe the tears off and get up and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And you spoke to that rejection that Peter, you knew that he would experience with being an autistic child. How is it navigating when you have that rejection? Like you said, he's been kicked out of different daycares. Like, how is that navigating that for him? And how do you explain that to him without him feeling different?
Well, it's one thing about him. He didn't really realize what was happening until, now he's 5. So it took him a while to realize what was really happening. But by that point, I found the resources, and I made sure that I put him around people who will accept him for who he is. So like he has a best friend who's, they get in trouble all the time, but he had his friend. So I had to kind of look for somebody who's supportive for the environment or supportive for him that he can kind of latch on to. So just being very proactive, saying this environment doesn't want you, this environment doesn't want you. Where can I put you where somebody will love you?
Yeah. And I want to talk about the different books that you have written. You've written 10 books, am I right?
Yes.
10 children's books. Yeah.
I have one more comment I haven't mentioned yet.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. So I want you to talk through kind of different ones and why you wrote them, and tell us about your new book that you're almost done with now.
So the first book, Through the Eyes of a Special Child, I wrote that so people can kind of see through his eyes, because I call him my silent ninja. So I start each chapter with a story about what happened. For example, him jumping off the back of the sofa. That sounds cute until you realize this is a kid who doesn't talk. and you're walking to the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
So it's like how things that he did were a little bit different, and or like him falling on the ground in the grocery store and me stepping over him. Because people see children who are special needs different, but they also see the parents as different. And as parents, sometimes we're
Mhm.
trying to teach our child in public places. So you have to stop looking at what people think about you and think about what you're trying to teach your child. But so people can kind of look into his eyes, what he sees, and through my life, but then how God's provided a way, but also how we are all special. For example, somebody might lose a parent. All of a sudden they hurt and they can't articulate, just like a special needs child. So how you can see yourself through their eyes because you become like them in certain situations. And then my first book for kids was Peter Loves God and Loves Others, to teach them kindness, how to say thank you, how to say you're welcome. Somebody gets hurt, you pick them up. Because one thing about autistic kids, they don't always read social cues. And I wanted him to learn if somebody's
Mm.
crying and they're on the floor, you help them up. You say, are you sorry? Things like that. I wanted him to learn how to
Yeah.
hurry up and get ready. Sometimes you have to be rushed to go places. Get ready. And actually one book, one of my latest books, Bella's Never Alone, was for another little girl. She said she was scared of things. I wanted my son to not be afraid of things. So if he's
Mhm.
afraid, he can say, in Jesus' name, I'm not afraid. And he does that now when it's dark. Because I don't want him to be afraid of things. I don't want him to be afraid of something
Yeah.
creeping or something like thunder, lightning, darkness. I don't want him to be afraid.
It's teaching him life skills and
Exactly.
how to be in this world. And that
Mhm.
he's really not different. I mean, I think I feel like as human beings in the world, we're all different in
Right.
some way.
Right.
He, he's no more different than we are in this world. And I think
Exactly.
it's great to explain that to other people. Like, how do you explain autism to someone that doesn't understand it so that they can understand that they're just like us?
Exactly. So what I tell
Mhm.
people, when you're autistic, you just kind of sense the world differently. So maybe the sounds might be intense. Maybe things that you touch might be intense. Maybe your emotions might be more intense, but you just feel things in a more intense way. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't feel the need to talk. One thing I realized about my son, he could talk. He didn't feel the need to talk. So not talking didn't necessarily mean something was wrong with him. He just didn't feel the need to talk. He talked when he was
Yeah.
frustrated, but he just had to learn how to be more social. But not everyone's going to be a social butterfly. So he might just be a quiet child, and that's okay.
True. I have two sisters, and my mom says all three of us are different. She says
Yeah,
like night, noon, and day. She's like, all three of you are different. And
right.
I think that's really how it is. It's really just, you're just learning your child. You're trying to understand how can you support them the best way. And I feel like that's all you're doing as well. It's no different than any other parent. And I think needs to be expressed more. I I remember going to school and having we actually had a girl in my class that she was special needs and she wanted to be a cheerleader
Hmm.
every year from I'd say seventh grade up until high school. High school,
Right.
she was on our cheerleading squad. She
So,
was with us. She
mhm.
went everywhere with us, and she, I feel like being around special needs kids like that, it makes it so much more normal. And
Yeah.
I think it's needed for sure. Yeah.
And I think sometimes that people don't realize they learned a lot from the special needs child. Like a lot of
Yeah.
kids in my kids' preschool, they learn how to, when the teacher asks a question, says, be quiet, how to be quiet. They're like, he's quiet, I can be quiet
Yeah.
like him. And he's taught other kids how to spell their own name, which is crazy.
Oh,
And
wow.
people are like, he's so smart. And I'm like, yeah, he is very smart.
Yeah, he is.
So
Yeah.
it's just like, just
Oh, I
because
love
he's
that.
different doesn't mean he needs to be overlooked. He's actually teaching other kids other things.
Exactly. So when you found out that Peter was autistic, talk to us about the research that you did. Because as any parent, you probably went Googled and trying to figure out, okay, how can I best support him? But what is actually going on with him? And being a doctor as well, I bet.
Yeah.
So talk to us through that.
So it was difficult at first because if you Google autism, you get resources, but like I contacted the state of Alabama and had to wait a couple of months to get a book. And I realized that special needs resources are not all in one place, which that to me
Mm,
was a little bit disturbing. So I'm always telling people, if somebody says, I have a kid with autism, I'm like, hey, go here, here, here. And it was really
yeah.
difficult to find out where to go. He was in daycare to find a daycare for him to go to. So I was calling all over Timbuktu. So I realized that it's difficult. And that's one of the reasons I kind of
Mhm.
joined some things with United Ability because they need to get the information out to parents. So when they get the diagnosis, they know where to go.
I never thought about it that way, or would think that it was so hard to get resources because you're seeing more people have autistic children.
Oh, yeah.
You would think that it would be more available than it is.
And even my doctor was telling me places, they're like, we don't take autistic kids. Like even the physician, my pediatrician couldn't direct me to the right places. So it just made it even more difficult that I had to find my own way.
Do you support any other families with autistic children, and kind of how have you found ways to help them other than provide the resources?
So I'm actually a part of Teacher First, which is a program with United Ability that sends a teacher to your home. So that's one thing that helped Peter so much because he learned how to be in a class environment. I learned how to be a mother, and not really be a mother, but I learned about autism. I learned about how to get him desensitized to textures, how to get him eating more variety, how to get him potty trained. It's difficult to potty train a kid who doesn't talk. So, I mean, they actually send somebody, it's a program that the state pays for, which I found out. They send a teacher to your house once a month. And it was amazing through that program how I was able to learn about autism for the family, how to help him basically help himself.
And then you have an oldest child as well. How old is your oldest?
He's 13.
13.
Yeah.
So talk about their dynamic and their relationship of how he is as an older big brother to Peter.
So one thing he said to me, which kind of cracked me up, he's like, well, Mom, God knew that Peter needed a really, really big brother because he's a big, muscular football player. So, but interesting enough, he actually wrote a book. So he got mad when I published it because he made it a poem. So it's called A is for Awesome. So he talks about autism from a big brother standpoint. He's like, people see my brother as autistic, but I see how awesome. He talks about how he plays with cars for hours. He doesn't need to watch TV. I feel like he can wrestle him to the ground. So he actually wrote his own book.
Oh, wow. That's so awesome.
Awesome.
Oh, that's so cute. It sounds like they have a good relationship, and it sounds like he's proud to be his big brother.
Oh, yeah. He always says that his brother makes him laugh. He's like, yeah, I know he's different. He makes me laugh. Like he never picks on his brother, and he protects his brother. He's very protective.
That's awesome. What advice do you give mothers or parents?
So one thing I always tell them is, number one, breathe. It's going to be okay. Like things are different. Things are difficult. It might seem difficult. Let their other child help. Make sure if they're different, don't ignore them and push it aside. Include them as much as you can. It might be difficult, and not to look at what other people look at. Well, not really look at what other people are saying about you or looking at other people's stares. Remember that you're looking and doing what's best for your child. So if you focus on your child and your children, things will be okay.
How has, the death of Priscilla, but also having Peter being diagnosed with autism, how has that shaped you as a mom and as a person? Because those are things you probably never thought you would go through.
As a mom and as a person, I realized that I can be stronger than I think I am. But at the same time, it's, yes, you want to work. Yes, you want your family to be perfect. Life doesn't have to be perfect. Things can be amazing without having to have the white picket fence and a big car and everything. And as long as you're doing what needs to be done, you can have a great life. Even though you've lost a baby, even though you have an autistic child, you can still have a great life as long as you look through the right lens, if that makes sense.
I think that is what you say. I'm like, not even because I'm like, yeah, that's how I feel too. Even just through my health issues of battling 2 rare blood disorders and everything, like life looked so much different than I had in my head growing up. Having the white picket fence and, the husband and all the children around. Like, yes, we all have those dreams and goals in our mind of what we want for our life. But life throws curveballs and I feel like learning how to handle those. I'm like you. I'm like, I never knew I was that strong mentally, mainly, but mentally, physically, and emotionally. You never know your own strength until you go through something.
Yeah, and if you focus, you can hit that curveball out of the park.
Yes, you can, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I'm writing books. I never thought I would write anything. So, I mean, you'll be amazed what can come out. Because somebody says that warriors are not made warriors because they're warriors by default. It comes out with battle. So the people who dominate in the battlefield, it comes out during the battle.
It does.
You might feel weak, but as soon as you're under pressure, let's see what comes out. you might
That's beautiful.
realize
Yeah.
that you're stronger than you really think you are.
Mm-hmm. I think we really all are stronger than what we think we are. And we give ourselves credit to. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you probably never thought you'd find yourself at home now, because I mean, being a doctor, I watch Grey's Anatomy, so that's where I'm coming from. But you grow up in hospitals and you do residency, and you have this path to becoming a doctor. Like everybody knows that. Like this is where I am right now, but I know this is going to lead here.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're home and being able to take care of a child, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
How was that like having to take that back seat for you?
It's kind of crazy because I went to Johns Hopkins. I was like, that was the number one.
Yeah.
And now people are like, what? But at the same time, it's like, I feel like this is the best thing I can do. And I'm making more of an impact than I think I would have been as a university doctor. I'm like, yes, I was a partner. I was making good money. But I feel like I'm affecting lives. And in the scheme of things, I feel like that's a lot more important.
I agree. I took a back seat. Like I worked in HR for years, and after being sick and the stress, it was very stressful job. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take a risk on myself, and I'm going to take a back seat and do something that's not as stressful.
Right.
It's for my health, and I know it's for the betterment of me. Mm-hmm. So I understand that 100%.
Yeah.
You never know where you really will be in life. That's what I'm learning about life.
Yeah,
for sure.
That is so true.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it also has birthed this passion within you to have a nonprofit, to write books, to be able to be a mother to an amazing son, and to have an amazing big brother. Like it sounds like you're exactly where you're meant to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. For anybody that's struggling of thinking, am I supposed to be here? Like questioning, why me? Because I think people do go through that. I definitely have. What would you say to somebody that's listening to this podcast right now that may be like, but I'm going through this and I can't understand why me? What do you tell them?
Well, one thing I always tell people is, it's not necessarily why me, but something happened to you for a reason. Like I was given a special needs child, and through that, I'm able to help a lot of other families. My daughter passed, even though I missed her, there was a grander picture. From this, over 140 families have received answers because my daughter passed. So there's a reason why. You might not understand it right now, but there's a reason why, and use that situation and find out what the purpose of that situation was and where you go from there.
And I know you've been able to help so many people, just from even having autistic son to also helping with stillborns and non-invasive autopsies. What does that mean to you to be able to help other people? How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel wonderful. I mean, like I tell people, what I do is kind of morbid, but having a mom just melt in my arms, I know I'm making an impact. So when it comes down to legacy, what I want to do is make an impact. Everyone, even though it's great to have money and everything, bottom line, everyone wants to make an impact somewhere in the world. And I'm making an impact one person at a time. And that actually feels more and is more valuable than money itself.
Yeah. What hopes and dreams do you have for your nonprofit? Like, how far do you want to take this?
Honestly, I would love a legislator to back it and say, we need to pay for this. Because one thing I always tell people, if a baby is found dead at home, they get a free autopsy from the state. If the baby dies in your belly, no autopsy is paid for. So I was like, it's still a baby and you don't know why it passed. So I would love to get some legislator or congressman to say, hey, I'm going to back Priscilla's path and we're going to go and move for money for this. And I mean, I would love this to become national. That somehow, some way, either insurance or the government or the states will pay for autopsies. And then we can figure out what's happening all over the United States. Because if Alabama has over 450, I mean, think about California, think about Florida, think about all the other states this is going on.
Yeah.
Like every city, every state needs this kind of program. And it should really be paid by a government.
Yeah, that was my thought. Is I feel like there's so much you can do with this nonprofit. And like you said, teaming up with congressmen, senators, somebody to back it, to give you to maybe change laws, like make it
Exactly.
change policies or add policies and make it to where it's covered
Mhm.
more than, like you said. I never knew that if it dies in your belly, it's not covered.
Yeah, because insurance says that that's not a life for them to be covering. So I mean, they have there's no medical issues after for the baby, if that makes sense. So they cover
Yeah,
the mom
yeah,
and delivering, but they said the baby is not alive, so you don't cover it with insurance. I'm like, but you don't know why.
yeah.
So the baby is seen as a non-person, and I'm like, but that was a life.
It was. Yeah. Wow. The work you're doing is amazing.
Thank
The
you.
mental strength to do that, though. I mean, of course, you being a doctor, but having the mental strength to do a non-invasive autopsy on your child.
Mhm.
Was that the first one you've ever done? Was it on your child, or have you done non-invasive before then?
I had experimented with doing a couple because sometimes the mom says, I don't want you cutting in my baby. And I had done a couple of non-invasive autopsies, but
Hmm.
she was the first very thorough one I've done. And from
Yeah.
then, I mean, I've perfected it over the last 5 years.
Yeah. What did that unlock in you to do that non-invasive on your child, Priscilla?
It locked the idea that I need to do as few invasive autopsies as possible. If I do a non-invasive, do it. There's no need to go to invasive autopsy unless absolutely needed.
Yeah. How do you know the difference of knowing to do a non-invasive or not?
It depends on what I see in the baby and the placenta. If I can look at the placenta, medical history in the baby, what I see with the baby all together, if I can find out what happened, then no invasive autopsy is needed. If I still don't know what
Mhm.
happened to the baby, then not invasive autopsy is needed.
And most of the time, non-invasive can be the route most of the
Exactly.
time. Yeah. And then also with your books and everything you're doing for Peter, tell me about what do you see the future of your children's books?
I would love my children's books to go to special needs kids all over the United States at some point, because I feel like whether you believe in God or not, special needs kids need to know that they're seen and that they're loved.
Yeah.
And people need
Yeah.
to understand how to include them, and that including them actually helps the kids who are quote unquote not special. Because that's the
Yeah.
best way to, instead of separating kids out, put them together and help them learn how to live together, make a better
Yeah.
society.
It's very true. Well, thank you so much. You have done some amazing, incredible work. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes, even to the children's books, your nonprofit, where people can donate. I just want to reiterate to listeners right now, what do you do with this money that people donate to Priscilla's Path?
It goes directly to the university autopsies, which are the most expensive.
So it's very needed and very
Very much
important, it
so.
sounds like. Yeah. And then last question I love to always end my episodes with is really just something for listeners to take away from your story of strength and going down a road that you probably never thought you would. What advice would you give from your story alone to anybody that's listening?
When something difficult happens, cry when you need to cry. And when you stop crying, decide how you can use what happened as a purpose to help other people.
We all need each other.
Yes, we do.
And what's so funny is most of my episodes end that way, where it's like, you're not alone. We need each other.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. You're here for me.
Yes.
And it is so true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
you being there for so many other people as well. Yeah.
Thank you for having me again. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Life We're Given. If it inspired you, share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you are notified about future episodes. Until next time. Oh, and keep showing up for you. You deserve it.